Welcome to the channel. My name is Yacht. My family and I are documenting our journey to find a place where we can be happy, safe, enjoy a healthy outdoor lifestyle with a relatively low cost of living. So tag along during our search for this special place. All right, just arrived in the parking lot in Tavira. Time to check it out. Thanks for stopping by and checking out the channel. So this particular video is on Tavira and my initial impressions, and I won't really do a full pros and cons list because honestly there are hardly any cons, but I will kind of weave in some of the additional research that my family and I conducted when researching Tavira and looking at housing and stuff like that, and also to determine whether or not it would be a city or town that we fully consider to relocate to in Portugal. So, I'll weave in that additional information throughout my initial impression and then, kind of go from there. But we'll just jump right into it. First and foremost, it's a legit city. I mean, it is very, very, very beautiful. It has pretty much everything you need from a city. It's very, very clean, well kept. It's old. I mean, it's another great city with great history. It actually dates back to 1000 to 800 BC, and where it was, I believe, one of the first settlements in the Western Iberian for the Phoenicians. And so you have a lot of that history kind of permeating through the city when you walk in the streets and you see a lot of these old buildings and etc. So it's a great place to just walk the streets and just sightsee. The second thing that I'll talk about is shopping. It has pretty much everything you need. So there's a huge shopping mall on the east side of the city. I believe it's called Centro Comercial Tavira Gran-Plaza. I think that's it. So you have this huge shopping mall, and it has a pretty good selection of stores. It even has a movie theater. It has a grocery store built inside. I think it's Continent, I believe. But then, on the outskirts of the city, you have all the major supermarkets. So you have Lidl, Aldi, Continent, Pingo Doce on each side of the river. So the west side and the east side of the river, that kind of splits Tavira in half. And then you also have the Tavira market. But then, the other thing that you have, from a shopping perspective is if you travel 25 minutes west, you hit the big designer outlet mall that has everything, all the major name brands like Americans know of. So Adidas and clothing stores, Samsonite for if you need extra luggage to bring your wares back to whatever country you're visiting from. So it has that huge mall 25 minutes west from Tavira, but then if you hit 25 minutes east, you hit Spain. So it's a pretty good location, and it affords you a couple different opportunities from a shopping perspective. So from an activity standpoint, you have beautiful beaches nearby. I forget what it's called, but I'll put it here. And then you have one of the beaches called Praia do Barril. And the one thing I will mention about the beaches nearby is that it's technically not in the city of Tavira. So it's not like Lagos or São Martinho de Porto or Lisbon, where you can kind of walk down to the water and the beach and etc. From like Cascais, you literally have to drive outside of the city. It's not very far, but there's like a lagoon that cuts off these barrier islands, where the beaches are located. So you have to keep that in mind, is that if you want to go to the beach, you're most likely gonna have to drive. So you also have Tavira Castle. There's also a bunch of, I believe there's like 27 or 37 churches. Some of them are really old, that even date back to the 1200s or 1300s and stuff like that, when the Moors actually ran the city. So you have like this old sites to just walk around the city, as I mentioned, and just check out. One of the more popular ones is the famous bridge, which there's some debate as whether or not it was actually built during Roman times or the Moors' occupation of Tavira. But you have this beautiful old bridge that connects both sides of the city and crosses over the main river there. And then you also have a bunch of related museums, because of course, since it's such an old city, you have a lot of artifacts that have been found over the years. And you have Islamic museum in the city, and then there's also Tavira Museum, and I'll show pictures of that here. So yeah, there's a lot of activities from a museum perspective. If you're into that kind of thing, like I said, you can just walk the street. It's just so old and ancient that there's always something visually appealing about the city. So definitely check that out if you're into that type of thing. And then lastly, you have water activities. As I mentioned, you have beaches nearby, but then there's this lagoon that kind of dissects the beaches versus the city of Tavira. And so a lot of people take their canoes and kayaks and do stand-up paddleboarding there along the lagoon, and go out to the barrier islands and just kind of hang out. So you have a lot of that stuff and activities if you're into it. Next topic, housing. So if you want to rent, it's pretty slim pickings. Only a handful of rental properties I found even recently. Even though we were looking back in February of this year, it's still, the options are pretty slim. Most of the rental properties are outside of the rim of Tavira. So if you want to live in the city center, it's going to be pretty slim options for you. If you want to purchase a home, there are a bit more options, but they're still a little pricey. Not as pricey as compared to places like Praia da Luz and Lagos and etc. But it's still a little pricey compared to other cities and towns throughout Portugal, especially like the Silver Coast. So definitely keep that in mind. Most of the places that I found were apartments, so what they call flats in Portugal. T2s, you can find some T3s, which aren't very expensive, in considering in the whole of the Algarve. But if you want a detached home, it's a little more pricey. And most of the places I found are actually outside of the city center. So that's something that you have to keep in mind if you're looking to purchase a place in Tavira. Next thing I'll talk about is the transportation. There is a train, kind of like Lagos, where you have a train running through the city, and you can take that train from Tavira all the way to Faro, the airport there, and then it even connects to the other railway going up to Lisbon. So that's a good option if you feel like you may not want to have a car. I still recommend that you have a car if you're going to consider living in Algarve, because a lot of these cool places and activities, they just aren't conducive to take the public transportation, which from what I've heard from other people and that actually live in the Algarve, and other people that I've kind of discussed this whole item of transportation with, they said it's not reliable. So just keep that in mind, is that it's there, but it wouldn't be a great way to kind of plan your day to get around and do activities, because a lot of times it may not run as scheduled. I think Tavira could be a good option, and I'll start with the single people first. There are a couple nightclubs. There are plenty of restaurants, bars. I mean, you have a lot of options, considering that Tavira is kind of on the outskirts of the main Algarve of like Albufeira and stuff like that. So there are some options for single folks to mingle and have a good time. Then there's also a lot of activity. When I was walking around, the city was very vibrant. I mean, it was a weekday and people were out and about, eating outside of the cafes, and it was really nice. It was really nice to see that activity, that vibrancy, and that's the kind of thing that I look for from just visiting cities. And to put on top of that, the day that I was there, it had rained all morning. It was raining when I arrived, and so people were still outside enjoying their time. And so as a single person, I could see where Tavira could be a good spot for you. Then also, the population of Tavira is about 25,000 people. Well, the municipality of Tavira. So, that bodes well for single people, because it's one of the largest cities in the Algarve. And if that's where you want to be in the Algarve, where you have a little bit more consistent warmer weather, the fact that the population is a bit higher, that's a plus. It's definitely a plus if you're single. So, if you're single, definitely check out Tavira. It's a gorgeous place, and you have a lot of opportunities to mingle and meet new folks that come in. And then it's also one of the more popular tourist destinations in the Algarve, just based off of the history and how old it dates back, and it's just a really pretty city. So that's also another factor that will help single people because there's always an influx of tourism and people coming in just to visit. So single people, definitely check out Tavira. Could be a good landing spot for you. For families, it could be a good spot to raise kids as well. Most American families at least consider Tavira as a landing spot when they arrive to Portugal. Like I mentioned, it has all the activities. I mean, there's also nearby horse ranches, so you can, a bunch of trails and stuff like that. So it has a lot to offer for families. There's also the public school system there that is, pretty good. And then there's also a private/international school there inside of Tavira. This particular international school, it's what they call year one. It usually starts at 6 years old. So if you have younger kids and you want to put them in an international school, you may have some issues. And, and that was one of the things that kind of ruled out Tavira for us as a family, is because we have 2 younger kids under 6. So we want to put them in an international/private school. That's something to keep in mind for families. If you have older kids, it won't be a problem. And you want to put them in an international school, or put them in a public school, which is great as well. So, it's really good for families. And as I mentioned, the housing is a little bit cheaper compared to the other places in the Algarve. So you have that going for you as well. And then the last thing that I'll touch on, which is pretty minor for a lot of folks, is that, it does get really hot in Tavira during the summer. I checked the temperature during the summer, like the highest of the high, and they have recorded highs of 102 degrees Fahrenheit on average is about 85, 86 degrees Fahrenheit daily during the summer. So for folks that, you know, don't do very well with high temperatures and heat, you know, this could be a deal breaker for you, and you may want to consider another city. But overall, Tavira is absolutely great. As I mentioned, only reason why we didn't consider it because we have 2 younger kids, and you know, the schooling situation wasn't great for us. Definitely check it out if you're single, your families. It just has everything that you need. Once again, thanks for stopping by, and I'll add some additional footage that I had took during my time kind of walking the streets in Tavira, and I hope you enjoy. Thank you.